Hello and welcome to another episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. The nature of this show has to do with, obviously the soul of business, but really where my focus is in putting this show together was to provide access to resources, thought leaders, folks that have actually walked that mile, that last mile, if you will, to business success. And for my bias, being able to connect to that unique piece that makes your business unique is where the soul of business comes into play. My guest today, Dr. Jonathan Baktari, is a serial entrepreneur, but he's also a medical professional. One of his companies is called E7 Health. It's been named the best technology company in the healthcare space in 2019. Yeah, he's got some cred that is something that you want to pay attention to here. And I wanted to have him on the show because just in reading his bio and some of the information that I've gotten and gleaned from him on a number of the different various websites that he makes available, and on his podcast, he's the host of a very popular podcast, and we'll talk about that in just a minute as well. But how do you crack the code on sustainable success? I mean, this is something that I'm very interested in. I've developed a program on that myself, and we're going to talk about that as well at the end of the show. A shameless commercial plug here. But I want to welcome right now Dr. Jonathan Baktari. John, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's a big honor, and I've been looking forward to it. So thanks for having me.
As a medical professional, I've been working in the healthcare space, the hospital systems, and with clinics for almost 15 years now. I'm on the teaching faculty of the American Association for Physician Leadership. And the question that I often will run into is, how do I translate and transfer the knowledge that I have as a doc, as a healthcare professional, into running a business? And that is a question that is always, kind of intrigued me, and it's led to some very interesting conversations and work that I've done with hospital systems. You've managed to crack that code. Not only are you a clinician, you are a renowned doctor. Yeah, you've got a lot of stuff going on. You've got businesses, and you run businesses, not just one, but multiple businesses. Let's unbundle this on this episode with you, if you wouldn't mind, because I think you've got some fascinating things to talk about. Beginning with, and this would be my question here, how do you keep your businesses and the people in your businesses connected to what I call the soul of the business?
That's a great question. The one thing I realized very early on is the people in your businesses or business look to you to see what you're made out of. And if you have integrity and you have ethics and you genuinely care about the people in your organization rather than we're here to make money, which of course should be a byproduct if you do everything else well, I think they pick up on it. They're not stupid. They figure out, what the guy on top, what's he made out of? Yeah. And I think people lose focus of that. If you're simply driven to be a success in business, meaning just the bottom line, money, which is very important, I think people pick up on it. So you have to exude that it's about making a difference, having a mission, about improving the lives of people that you're serving, as well as improving the lives of your staff. If that's not part of your core mission, you're probably going to struggle.
Regular listeners to this podcast can really resonate with what you're saying there. And I'm interested, how do you keep people connected to the idea that was the genesis or the catalyst for your business? Yeah, because that, and where I'm going with this, John, is that every organization is first formed as an idea, and then it actually begins to take form. from there. And
Right.
typically, the founder is the one, obviously, the one is most closely wedded to that idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah, it's an expression of him or her, writ large, out there in the business environment in the marketplace. But that idea gets kind of diluted as you start growing the organization. How have you kept your people connected to that idea? And I've got to assume that you have. If you've got an organization that was deemed the best tech company in the healthcare space, you've got to have something going on there. So, how have you managed to keep your people connected to that idea that is the germ of the company?
Yeah. Part of it is also picking the right people. I mean, we only take in people that are a good fit. We don't have any positions that are clock in and clock out. We don't have any filler positions. We don't have any positions where this can just be, a pit stop until you get to your next job. The way we sort of serve it up is that this is a career. Um, and have we caught you in the right time of your life where this is, you want something more than clocking in, clocking out. I don't mean people are working more than 40 hours a week necessarily, but those 40 hours, we want them to be engaged. We want them to move the ball forward. And in exchange for that, we're going to try to figure out how to take care of them professionally and financially. So I think building the right team and not necessarily just hiring for skill. We hire for passion, we hire for commitment. And that can be tough, by the way, especially when you're first starting out. You don't have a lot of redundancy, and you can't just hire everybody like that maybe at the beginning. But clearly, as the years roll by, and not that we even fired people. I think people looked around and said, "Oh my gosh, to be in this organization, you need to be all in," and I'm not all in, and so this is not a good fit for me. And so it's almost kind of weeds itself out once you have that core principle.
That's an interesting noticing there. People looking up and going, our culture is a culture of all inness.
Mm-hmm.
And so the self-selection that begins to occur is a function of the cultural portion of the. So as a startup, and you've had a number of startups here that have been successful. How do you begin the process of developing a culture that supports the aspiration that the company is attempting to live into?
Mm-hmm. Well, it really becomes from, everyone, including yourself, having an owner's mentality. One of the things I ask certain staff, like, hey, if I sold you this company for $1, would you show up tomorrow and give me a different product? And if they say yes, then I say, well, listen, I need that product out of the gate. And if you give me that product, then we're going to take care of you professionally and financially. So it's a bartering system, right? And then you get a number of people that buy into that, and they then impact other people with that philosophy. Because look, you take two startups, right? Both great ideas, both in a garage somewhere in Silicon Valley, and they hire the first 5 people. I mean, it's not unreasonable to think, assuming the ideas are the same and the financing is the same, the likelihood of success is really going to be dependent on the commitment of those first 5 people, right? If one startup has 5 people that are all in and they're owners and they're not renters and what have you, it can actually impact whether you're successful or not. So it's not just something nice to have. It's not nice to have. Oh, it'd be cool to have that. No. It will increase. I won't guarantee it, but it will certainly increase the likelihood of being successful. If Uber's first 5 employees were just clocking in and out, would they be where they are today? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, you could have a great idea, you could have everything, but if your first core leadership is just a job for them, no one can argue that will impact the likelihood that you'll be successful.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, two things here. One, a lot of my work is on leadership development. I mean, that's a lot of my exclusive focus is on developing leaders that are highly effective in whatever domains they find themselves operating in, primarily life. But one of the ways that I've defined leadership is it's a process of influencing others in order to co-create coordinated movement. And what you've just touched on here is that co-creation piece, which is basically ownership transference. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this question. I'd never even thought of this question. If I sold you the company for $1, that is an amazingly opening question to tap
Yeah,
into.
and you should see the answers I get. Like I ask this pretty much. I say, would you come in tomorrow morning and give me a different product than you're giving me today? I'm not saying work more hours.
Yeah.
Would you notice the fax machine was broken if you were the owner? Of course you would. Would you notice that the shipment never came in? That it's not even in your department? Yes, as an owner, you would notice that. And so then I say, well, listen, if you could give me that product, sounds like you could, right? If I sold you the company, you would. How about this? Just give me that product anyway. And in exchange, we're going to take care of you. We're going to take care of you financially, professionally. If we grow, you're going to grow. Because that's what the definition of an owner is. What happens to an owner, a guy who owns a pizza shop? If they double the number of pizzas they sell, well, it's going to mean good things for the owner, right? Same thing. If we're going to treat you like an owner, if you're part of the reason this company is growing, you're going to know it. But not if you're clocking in and out.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that it's a bartering system.
And that's interesting. And I want to that question of it's a bartering system. I want to explore that a little because I mean you just triggered something in my mind about the distinction between satisfaction and loyalty. And I want to just check this out with you in my thinking here. And it typically shows up in metrics. We're measuring customer satisfaction as an example, and that's going to be transactionally based. And if I stub my toe one time on a transaction, you're dissatisfied as a client or as a customer or as an employee, as a matter of fact here. But if I'm targeting loyalty in the vernacular that I'm thinking of it here, I can stub my toe on a transaction. But if I've been looking at maintaining the quality of the relationship, loyalty comes into play there. And I can stub my toe once, maybe twice, maybe even 3 times here. But because there's a conversational dynamic in play here, I'm going to have loyalty, and there is a forgiveness component that builds into that.
Yes.
When I heard you say the word bartering, what struck me was it's a dialogic. It's a dialogue. It's not a take it or leave it transaction. Here's the price.
Well, it can't be. You know why? Because why would someone agree to that? I mean, in other words, if I'm an employee, okay, and I'm coming and doing a good job, clocking in, clocking out, and then my boss comes up to me and says, I need more. You're like, but why? Why should I give you more? I mean, as long as I'm coming in, I get here on time, I leave on time. So it's a one-way street if you just ask for more, right? Yeah. You're like, well, my last job, I didn't have to do that, and they were fine with me. Now you're telling me you're not fine with me clocking in. My last 5 jobs, I was okay with clocking. They loved me. When I was at Macy's, I clocked in and I clocked out. I sold some shirts and was nice to everybody, and they were totally happy. Now you're telling me that's not going to be good enough here? If it was good enough for Macy's, why isn't it good enough for you? And the answer to that, of course, is when Macy's hires you, they're not asking you to change Macy's stock price, right? They're just asking you to sell those shirts and be nice and do a good job and what have you. Be nice to everybody. But in a startup or in a small organization, or when you're trying to develop a leadership, we are asking you to change our stock price, metaphorically.
Mm-hmm. Yep. How do we add value? We add value by showing up. Probably as simple as I can make it. We're going to take a real quick break here. When I come back from the break, what I'd like to dive into something here. One of the areas that you actually speak really well into are the top 5 underrated CEO skills. And you are a legitimate expert to be able to articulate that. So, folks, when we come back, I'm going to have Jonathan just kind of unbundle from his perspective in running these organizations and starting these organizations. What does a CEO need to be paying some attention to that may be different than what you think it is? So we'll take a short break and be right back. The nature of life is evidenced in nature. Nature grows, and all of nature honors the desire to be more, to have more, and to do more. Life thrives when it's allowed to grow. And ideally, thriving is what we also, all of us, want to be able to do. Unfortunately, at some stage in life, most people find themselves settling into what I can only call a rut. And a rut is nothing more than a coffin with the ends kicked out. You want to quickly get out of any rut that you find yourself in. When you stop growing, that's when the coffin starts to appear. You know, the simple truth is this, and this is true for everything in nature. You're going to die. I'm going to die. Every one of us dies. So the question we need to come to grips with is not, are we going to die? The question nature asks us to answer is, are we truly living? That's what motivation is about. It's the desire to move. It's the desire to grow and to excel. Have I lived? How have I lived? I'd love for you to take advantage of my Leadership Mindset Masterclass. It's all about providing you with the tools to ensure thriving for yourself and for those around you. Register today to receive the free introduction video and find out more about this acclaimed program. You'll also receive a copy of my international #1 bestseller, Compassionate Capitalism, A Journey to the Soul of Business. I'm Blaine Bartlett, and I look forward to helping you thrive. Welcome back, folks. Hope you enjoyed that little interlude there. And I do want to encourage you to check out that masterclass. I think you're going to find some very interesting information there. Before I took the break, I kind of teased a little bit about having Jonathan talk a little bit about, from his experience, what are the 5 critical underrated skills that a CEO actually needs to be paying some attention to. So you've got a track record of significant success here. You've started a couple of different companies that have actually done very well. You've got a staff that sticks with you. You've got clients. You've got basically stakeholders in the broadest sense of the word that really value what you're bringing to the table. And as a leader, quote unquote, as the CEO of these organizations, what have you learned that most people probably wouldn't be paying some attention to, if I could put it in that context? The underrated CEO skills that you've actually leveraged.
Right. The first one actually is something that most people don't think about, which is that being a CEO is not a soft skill. I think people think that being a CEO is something that, you can figure out. Like if you're likable, if people respect you, if you're a good guy, that's going to make you a good CEO. That's, by the way, you do need all those things to be effective, but you wouldn't be able to land a 747 because you're a nice guy and people respect you, right? You wouldn't be able to take out an appendix because you're a nice guy and people respect you and people like you. But I think a lot of people think that I can be a leader because, I'm a nice guy. People like me. It was my idea to start this company. And so, I have a good sense of humor. Who cares? Because that doesn't, or it was, I put the money in, you put the money in, it was your idea. I don't know how that makes you the right person. So I'm not saying you shouldn't be the CEO, but I think you need to realize you need to acquire some skills. Just like, you may be a good person to land a 747, but you're going to have to take a year of classes or 2 years of classes before you can do that. And when it comes to being a CEO, people think they can bypass that. It's just, yes, I'll ask a few questions at the meetings. I'll figure it out. But it's not that simple because you're going to wind up making a lot of mistakes. and you're going to pay tuition one way or another. You're going to pay tuition in the school of hard knocks, when you make all those mistakes, or you can acquire them. You wouldn't go play a violin in front of a crowd full of people without any lessons, but yet
Right.
you're going to walk into your first board meeting as a CEO because you just thought of this idea 3 months ago, and have the skill sets to be the CEO.
So what I'm hearing in that is get your ego out of the way.
Yes. And that's probably, people ask me, what is it about being a doctor that helped you in that process? Which is interesting because doctors have this reputation of having a big ego, always being the smartest guy in every room. And that's true. But there's another side of medical training that actually taught you not to be like that. So when I was a third year medical student, and my fourth year medical students told me do this, I'm like, yes, right away. And when I was a fourth year medical student, my intern would tell me go do that, or this is how you do this. I'm like, yes, of course, yes, yes, yes. And then when I was an intern, I had a resident. When I was a resident, I had a fellow. When I was a fellow, I had an attending. We're trained to be mentored and learn from others. The problem for some physicians is once they get to the top, they're like, I'm at the top of the pyramid. Thank goodness, no more listening to other people. And if you can only continue that, if you can view, business and getting involved in leadership as yet another fellowship or another residency where you shut up and listen, which is what you did in your training. Believe me, anyone who's been through any rigorous formal training in the United States will tell you the key to success to get through an internship, residency, or fellowship is to shut up and listen. There's no you can have a dialogue, but by and large, blowback is not welcomed. If they say this is how you take care of the patient, you can ask questions, but they don't want any blowback, right? Nobody wants to hear blowback from someone who is not at their level and wants to challenge how they're doing things. Again, they're on margins you can, but broadly speaking,
yeah,
it's frowned upon. Who are you? You're a medical student and you have an attending who's been doing it for 20 years and you want to challenge that? I'm like, really? You're not going to do that. You're not going to challenge that person. You can ask questions, help me understand better. That's always welcome. But you're not in a position to, challenge that position. You can, in rare occasions. But so anyway, so this is part of our DNA to shut up and listen. And then when you get into leadership, you need to find mentors in business who are going to hold your hand, who you can call and say, hey, I've got a meeting coming up with an important vendor. This is the facts on the ground. How would you be tough on them? Would you be easy on them? Would you show all your cards? Would you puff up your chest? What's the best way to do this? And so you need to have mentors when you're first starting out to know how to negotiate. One of the first things I learned is an old adage. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. And so you think you're just going to walk into a room and say, we deserve this. This would be fair. Like, nobody cares. It depends who's got the leverage. It depends who's holding the cards. They're not there to do fair. They're there to do the deal that they can do given the amount of leverage they have in that negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's given the circumstance. And you have to understand that. You have to learn who's going to teach you that. You're going to learn just on the job on how to negotiate. When to be tough, when not to be tough, when to put out the honey, when to put out the sugar, when to put out the vinegar. How do you calibrate that? How much of it do you do? So a lot of skill sets that any leader needs to acquire. So you can do it the easy way, or you can do it the hard way.
Yeah. There's a dummy tax involved. There is no free lunch. If I walk into the boardroom and get my head handed to me,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to learn a lesson there. So ideally, and this is where mentoring, I think, really does serve very, very well. These folks have already paid the dummy tax. If I can find
Mm-hmm.
somebody that has done that well, I don't have to pay that tax myself. And it
Right.
increases my likelihood of being successful over the long haul. One of the things, I mean, as you're talking here about these skill sets and whatnot, it strikes me, and this is something that I do pay quite a bit of attention to, that all any organization is a collection of people in relationship, and I don't mean just the
Mm-hmm.
core group, but to the degree that the relationships are working well, you got a pretty good shot at being successful. And relationships, obviously the most, the interpersonal ones are the most obvious. But you've also got relationship with goals, with values, with belief systems, with work process, with all of everything has a relational component to it. And the lingo in what allows relationship efficacy is high quality communication. And that's what I actually hear you speaking to. Listening is probably 80% of communication, if not more. Being able to listen effectively and then being able to ask effective questions. If I want to challenge the powers that be, I need to be able to do that in a way that doesn't, cause a lot of blowback
Mm-hmm.
where I don't get the question answered that I'd like to have
Mm-hmm.
answered. So, how have you learned? Because most people don't learn to communicate uh,
Mm-hmm.
through anything other than an accidental trial and error approach. I've
Mm-hmm.
got to guess that you've practiced a little bit here. I mean, you've got a program that I believe it's called High Converting Call, and it was a class that you used to run internally with your staff, if I remember right here. And it's a communication protocol. Basically, how do we communicate with folks in a way that produces the result that we intend to produce, which is the purpose of communication, is to produce a result, which, by the way, is also the purpose of leadership, is to produce a result. So leadership and communication are essentially the same thing. Can you talk a little bit about this high converting call format that you've got in place
Yeah.
with your organization? And you're actually, as I understand it, making it available to the public right now, too.
Yeah, it's on a website called highconvertingcallclasses.com. It's actually a course that we had internally. We just put it on Kajabi, which is a platform, but highconvertingcallclasses.com. And basically what that is a strategy for converting phone calls, but even in person, but certainly phone calls into appointments or sales. And we needed that for all our organizations. So many, many years ago, I started doing research. I started taking classes, and it was a compilation of many courses I took, many books I read, and then we implemented it slowly. So it evolved over 10, 15 years, and it actually became a formal internal course that staff would go through. And we just got to the point that we finally decided to offer it to the public. But in essence, the idea of certainly sales in the traditional sense is not the way to approach it. High pressure, overcoming objections, whatever. There is another way to do it, which is to convey you are the Michael Jordan of whatever it is that you're doing. And when nobody would go to Michael Jordan and want basketball lessons, but start to question his authority on the subject matter or even the price. I mean, you're Michael Jordan. I mean, obviously that doesn't mean you have to be unreasonable, but I'm saying the price objection and the other objections that people often get is really because they're not convinced that you are the authority on this matter. And so once you're sitting with the authority, they might be able to save a couple of shekels by going somewhere else, but they're not going to get you. And I think that's in sales, oh, well, there's someplace cheaper, better. But at the end of the day, the whole idea in this interaction is what are the rules and strategies to convey that they've called even the right hair salon or the right lawyer or the right anything. There is a way to convey your authority in a non-salesy way, where instead of having to overcome objections, just don't get the objections, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And again, where can people find this? Because I do want to make it available to our listeners because I think
Oh
it's a
yeah,
it's it's really
yeah,
very powerful.
I'm telling you, any obviously my staff has all taken it, and anyone who's taken it, it changes the way they even talk in general. But it's highconvertingcallclasses.com, and go to that website and you can see some preliminary videos and how to sign up for the course. But it's really also meant for people who want to change their entire sales staff or the people that answer the call. It will really revolutionize what we found in our internal statistics. When we take someone off the street who we hire and we just let them answer the phones with just the basic information you would normally have, they're able to convert about 20-30% of the calls into appointments or sales. With this course, if you fully implemented role play and get all the strategies down, it gets it up to 70-80%, which is interesting because if you get 20 calls a day and you're converting 30%, that's 6 people or 6 sales or 6 appointments. And a lot of times people are like, we got to spend more money on marketing, we're only getting 6 appointments a day. Well, maybe you could spend more money on marketing, or maybe you, instead of signing up 30%, you're signing up 80% of the same calls you're getting. So you get 20 calls, okay, and now you're converting 80%. So you have 16 appointments or 16 sales. So I think the focus is we just need more phone calls. Yeah, you get more phone calls, but you're only converting 30%. Why not at least double that and keep not spend as much money on marketing? And if you are going to spend money on marketing, they'll still be 80% of whatever you increase it to.
Right.
Again, that's if you're fully trained, really throw your back into the course, spend a lot of time on it, rehearse, practice, because the way we teach you how to talk in this course is not instinctual. It's not how we normally talk. Now, it doesn't sound different, but it's not the natural way of talking. I'll give you an example. One of the things we teach in the course, one of many, many things, is when you answer a question, don't pause. For example, when you how many models do you have? And we have 4 models. And what we found in neurolinguistics teaches us that when you pause, it forces the other person to generate a question, which is fine, but it's often a question they didn't have. They just didn't like the pause.
Yeah.
But then you do wind up going down this rabbit hole of answering a question that they didn't really have, which then causes them to double think about other things, and the conversation spirals in the wrong direction. So I just feel like a teaser rule, but it's hundreds of rules like that, and then how to then convey you are the authority. So even if they could go somewhere else, they're not going to get you, or they're not going to get your company. They may get the same product potentially or same service, but they're certainly not going to have you.
Yeah, beautiful. Dr. Jonathan Baktari, I want to thank you for joining me on the show today. Where can folks find out more about you specifically and what you're up to?
Yeah, we have a website, baktarimd.com, which has pretty much everything we do, our podcasts, my appearance on news magazines and other places and other podcasts that we've done. Also, I'm on LinkedIn, if Baktari MD, if they want to reach out in any way. And then, of course, our websites for our companies, E7 Health, eNational Testing, and USDirectTestCenters.com. They're all, welcome to visit all those. But they're all on our LinkedIn profile and in BaktariMD.com.
Good. And I'll make sure they're on the show notes as well. So,
again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been an absolute treat. I've loved the conversation. I've loved what you've brought to the audience. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Blaine. Thank you.
You bet. And folks, thank you for listening to this episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. Check out my website, as long as we're talking about websites. Specifically, you might go to learn.blainebartlett.com/toolkit. And what you'll find there is an access to a sustainable success toolkit. And if you're interested in sustaining success over life, as Earl Nightingale said, success is the continual pursuit of a worthy ideal. How do you do that? Well, that's what this toolkit answers. So, check it out. And you'll find that the price point is very, very friendly. Okay. And I'll see you on the next episode. And until next time, find a way to be continuously a center of distribution in your life, not a center of accumulation, you'll find your life works a whole lot better. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Hi, I'd like to ask you to do something for me if you wouldn't mind. If you like this episode, I'd like you to not only subscribe on your favorite site, but I'd also like you to give a rating. Ideally, a 5-star rating would be greatly appreciated. But I think more importantly also would be just some comments. That helps with the algorithm, and it helps build the audience with this. And more than anything else, if you could invite somebody else to listen, just share this episode with a friend, with a colleague. And I'd like to see how we can grow the soul of business. I think it makes a difference. Thanks.